right? Now we're talking about how the company can charge you for your energy. So this is a bill to you or your name. And let's review just what we talked about, that power is equal to current times voltage. So just a little quick reminder of units. Power is in watts, current is in amps, and voltage is in volts. You could also say that this is joules per second for watts or amps times volts, but that kind of gives you an idea of what we would have. All right, so they charge you some amount after some amount of time, and this is what your bill would look like. And you can see that they have the read dates. So back when I was young, they would come into your backyard. If you've ever seen somebody just come into your backyard, you might think stranger danger, and then you would be like, oh, that's the person reading my meter to see. They know what meter is assigned to your home, and then they had the previous reading, and then they have the present reading, and that was keeping track of how much energy you were using. So they had the difference to know how much you used for that month. And then apparently a multiplier if they didn't like you, because they could just multiply it by more. And then they would say that's your usage. And then they're going to take that usage and multiply it by their rate. And when I say rate, their cost, how much they want to charge you for that energy. So that if I had a bigger number here, my bill would be bigger. If I had a smaller number, it would be smaller, but it would be proportional to some type of actual value that they're charging you. Now, some interesting things we should probably notice. This is in kWh. So we're going to talk about the kW first. kW stands for kilowatt, because in large quantities, you would want to get your watts into kilowatts. So you're not talking about 400,000 watts. It's much more efficient to put it in a different unit. And so you could do your dimensional analysis like you probably learned in chemistry, where my watts would cancel, I'd be left with kilowatts. And so any value that I know I have, if you have a number here in watts, you can multiply by 1 divided by that 1,000, and that's going to get you your number in kilowatts. So we can see that kW is the kilowatt symbol. Again, now this weird portion here is, well, they're multiplying that amount by this, and they don't have a unit on it, which is kind of upsetting, but they give you an answer in dollars, so that will help us figure stuff out. And they're multiplying it by this, and they're multiplying it by this. So first things first, when they are talking about the supply, they're talking about like they're giving you the electricity, they're giving you that voltage of 120 volts at your house. When you talk about delivery, no matter who you want to use as your power company, ComEd has a monopoly on the fact that they built all of the wires coming to your home to supply that. And that kind of makes sense. It goes against having monopolies, but it makes sense that you're not going to have 2 different companies build 2 different sets of power lines and then have maintenance on 2 different sets or 3 different sets, and then those would just be all over, and that would be a lot of clutter and not really be efficient for the way that a town could function. So no matter who you pay, you will always pay ComEd for the delivery. They separate the 2 out because you're actually trying to prove, like, look, we're only charging you this much and ComEd is charging you this much. If you went to a different company, maybe they would charge you less here, but you would still have to, you'd be passed on the fees from ComEd for the maintenance of their power lines. All right, so if we come over to the cost part of the notes part, I always think about it just like babysitting. If I were to be babysitting, when I was younger, I think maybe it was like I would babysit for $20 an hour, and really per kid, because babysitting for more than one kid at a time is more work, And so it's not like you're going to babysit for 5 kids for $20 an hour, just like you would babysit for 1 kid for $20 an hour. So we kind of have to think about it. So that's where I would go, that the amount you make was equal to your rate. And when we say rate, we're talking about how much you charge. But times, we always just said per hour. So the amount of time that you were going to be babysitting for. And then I would say times the number of kids. Now, I know not every person babysits and gets a per kid kind of amount, but people usually figure that in since the number of kids usually doesn't change when you're babysitting. So if I were to say, okay, let's knock it down to maybe I made $10 per hour per kid, and I babysat for 3 hours, and I had 2 kids that I was babysitting for, we would know that this was $10 per hour per kid, and that's why it's a rate. It's really $10 per hour per kid times 3 hours times 2 kids. That would get me a value of 10 times 3 is 30, times 2 is $60. So ComEd is the one that determines the rate. And when we talk rate, like you are $10 per hour per kid, they're determining the rate at which they get to charge you for your electricity. So for them, it's the same idea. They're going to have their rate and their time, because they care how long you use your electrical appliance. But instead of our number of kids, they care what type of electrical appliance you have, and they care about it because they want to know how much energy per second that appliance is using. And if we were to place that in, that's going to be your power. So different amounts of energy per second depending on the appliance. So if I were doing that, you really want to know, like, is this my air conditioner or is this my light bulb? And so the units for that, the rate is going to be in dollars per kilowatt hour, which tells us the time is going to have to be in hours, and power is going to have to be in kilowatts. And the abbreviations for these, again, you saw kW, HR, and this one is really, they just use the $ kWhr. So if I go back over here, this is 491 kilowatt hours. They're taking this part and they have already multiplied it together by what they looked at. And then that is their rate of dollars per kilowatt hour. So they really should have units there, but of course they don't. And then you see that they charge you randomly for the supply, transmission, the customer charge is, oh, that one's not by your rate, that's just a fee. Standard metering charge, again, just a fee. And then the distribution facilities, they do that per how much you use. Illinois electricity distribution, they're just basically making up all these different reasons to charge you a lot. But if we wanted to figure out what their rate was, we would have to look and add up all three of these chunks, which is all 6 of those numbers, and we could see that ComEd charges you $0.10642 per kilowatt hour. And you might think, wow, that's not that much. But if you think about how much you're actually using, it tends to add up. There's 2 charts here, and 2 of those charts are kind of to show, notice when you have, the bill actually does show you this on your yearly usage. So this is saying my bill is right here. And I have a lower kind of charge in March, February, January, December, November, and October, and September, but I have a huge charge in June, July, and August. And you might think that those are your summer months So your summer months are when you are using an air conditioning unit, which is going to have a very high power rating, which therefore is going to make that multiplier for your kilowatt hours very large. If you think, well, like what do we use to heat our house? When you heat your house, you're often using gas, natural gas, and you pay a different company called Nicor usually to pay for that. So when you're heating your house, you're not using as much electricity. You're actually going to have a higher gas bill at this time, where in the summertime, you'll have a lower gas bill. And then I like to think, really, who is charging the most for energy? And this chart is a little outdated from 2011, but if you look at it, we are sitting right here at about, it says cents per kilowatt hour, so about 12 cents. And you could see Denmark charges 41 cents per kilowatt hour, so way higher than we are getting. And you have India and China charging way less. You could probably have a lot of discussions about what about these countries is making their energy costs higher or lower. Is it something that they're actually passing on the same cost? Are they trying to encourage you to use less energy? I don't know. Always an interesting thing. And when you are ready to submit your bill, you can send it to me at that address. But if you will, flip to the back side. And the back side shows you a chart. So this is what you're going to do right now. Any different appliance is going to have some type of power rating. You can see it on an energy label. And let's see, we have here your energy guide. So if they are trying to tell you how much it would cost for you to use per year, you would be able to say like, oh, then if I know that, I know this, how much I use it. I'm estimated by using for 5 hours use per day. Estimated yearly electricity would be this many kilowatt hours. Therefore, your utility rates, they're guessing 11 cents. They're going to tell you it's going to cost $39. I feel like this was a washing machine or something to operate that washing machine for the entire year. And below you have your coffee maker, hair dryer, straightener. So if you can't tell, this is your coffee maker, your hair dryer, your straightener. I took some pictures of them, and it's asking you to find the power rating. So if I look right here on the coffee maker, I can see that it's labeled as a 900 watt. 900 watt, I'll take out my units since they're up here, 900 watts to use that. So that's 900 joules per second. If I were to try to list the forms of energy, probably some motion, some temperature, I don't know, some sound. You could think of all of the things that happen. It's not intentionally making sound, it just is. Maybe you're going to pick this as your guess for what you want to run per day. So maybe I'm running my coffee maker for 30 minutes. And then you're going to calculate your cost per day and your cost per month. And so you would have to understand cost per day. If it's only 30 minutes per day, you probably want to get this unit into hours. And if you're going to do cost per month, you are going to multiply by, 30 or 31 days? I don't care. And that's going to be how you could estimate how much it costs you. Same thing if I were to do my hair dryer. These are always a little tough to read, but that one is right here. If I were to do my straightener, it is right here. And a Keurig, apparently I use a Keurig and a coffee maker right here. You're going to fill those in from the labels, but then go ahead and fill out the rest of this chart with an estimate that you would like to make as to how much your total cost would be. So you're going to calculate that here. Remember the equation that we did on the front side is the rate times the time times the power in kilowatt hours, and make sure your time is in hours, and your rate, we will go ahead and use 11 cents based on what we even have here. So let's say our rate is equal to 11 cents per kilowatt hour. All right, go ahead and do that.